Hi, Connie. I'm Christy. Nice to officially kind of meet you, I guess. um, Welcome to your tarot reading. I thank you so much for allowing me to share with you. And I'll show you a little bit about my space just so you can kind of put things in context. I live in Seattle, Washington. This is currently my bedroom you see behind me, but this is also my tarot table. So this is kind of my sacred space for working with the cards and sharing. I don't remember if I asked if you'd ever had a reading before, but I will give you a little bit of insight into my process, and just because I find that well, one, I don't believe tarot is reserved to only one person or two people or a handful of people. I really think interfacing with the divine is something that we are all gifted with, and so in case you're ever curious about exploring tarot, I like to share a little bit about my process just because I've been there where I'm new to something and don't quite know how to get going on it. What I like to do is I light my candles and then I have some sage that I will burn to cleanse the area. I usually make a circle around my table, and that's kind of that's a bit of a pagan tradition, making circles to enclose like safe spaces. And then today I felt like I really wanted to wash my cards in the smoke of the sage as well. So I did that. I'm feeling particularly drawn to the Wildwood Tarot for your reading today. Actually, I was drawn to two different decks, and I was given the option, and I chose the Wildwood Tarot. I was given the option in that it wouldn't matter, the messages would still be the same, and I chose to work with Wildwood Tarot today. This is what that, if you're ever in the store, this is what that looks like, Wildwood Tarot. I love it. It's based on the year of the wheel, which is more of an earth-based spirituality and understanding of time and seasons and all of that. So it speaks a lot in those terms. It's all very, you'll see it's very nature-based. And I have just been kind of meditating on you and a little bit of your question, but more so the question I ask is, what messages do you need to hear? So I'm actually doing this reading very close to the apex of the new moon, and which is a deeply spiritual, very potent space. And I was going to wait until later this week to do your reading, but something was just like, no, today's the day. So here we are. So anyway, I was meditating on you, what you need to hear, and so I'll, we'll see what comes forward. One thing I usually tell people that I'm doing readings for is that, and I apologize for that extra noise. Can't seem to make notifications stop, but is to, as with anything that's spiritual or intangible, is to take what resonates with you and leave behind what doesn't. And resonation is, I compare it to like if you're plucking a guitar string. When you pluck that and it vibrates, it makes a sound. That's considered resonation. But then if all the strings are flat, that is not it's not resonation, like it's not making noise. So in other words, if something strikes you and it creates a feeling in your body or some kind of emotional response or physical response, that is resonation. And if it falls flat, then let it be. Usually the things that fall flat, that don't resonate, we don't remember anyway. So I encourage you, if you want to press pause right now, to grab a journal. The nice thing about this recording is you can stop and go back and all of that. But the thing about these readings is that it's not necessarily important to take exactly what I say to you. It is important, however, to take what you hear me saying. Because so much of this is a message being given to you from spirit, from the divine, and while it may be my words, it's actually what you hear and what you understand that's the most important. That's the actual message. So if you're jotting things down, jot that down. Jot down what you hear or what you feel or how you've responded to it. And I will say, even if it's something that agitates you, that is still resonance. There's a reason it's coming forward, and it's important to pay attention to. Not to judge or get panicky, but just to write something down and pay attention to it. It may help to come back later, to write it down and then come back to it later and see what you should actually be doing with it. I do, it's okay totally to message me after you've listened to your reading and get any kind of clarification or questions answered. I usually give the disclaimer, though, that I am a conduit for this. So I am just the messenger. It's coming through me to you. And if it's something deeply personal, like you don't know why it came to you, then I usually encourage people to go to their spirit guides, to their higher power, whatever that looks like, in meditation and prayer, and ask for further guidance. And I won't, feel free to ask me first, and I won't hesitate to tell you if it's something I can or can't answer. So no harm, no foul if you want to come back and answer a question. I'm not trying to discourage that. I just usually like to give the disclaimer that these messages are not my own. So I won't be able to give a whole lot of insight. Okay. So that's kind of like first time reading, all the disclaimers and stuff. I know it's been a few minutes, and don't worry, the readings usually go over 30 minutes anyway, so this little intro piece doesn't really count. I wanted to start by sharing an archetype that I've pulled for you. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with archetypes, but Carolyn Mace is an incredible spiritual teacher. She's actually an intuitive medical healer. Really cool, awesome lady. She designed these things called archetype cards, and it comes from Jungian psychology. Carl Jung really dived deep into like psycho-spiritual work, and he kind of recognized and realized that we all carry these archetypes within us. And archetypes they're kind of like, I kind of see them as like characters, roles that we fill, that influence our day-to-day. You can find really cool archetype quizzes online if you're ever really curious about what your specific actually, Carolyn Mace has an archetype quiz. Let me see if I think it's just archetypes.com. Let me see if she notes it in here. Because I've taken that before. And it's really interesting to see what major archetypes influence you. It's kind of like a personality quiz. You can look at it that way. But I drew a card today, kind of meditating on you. What I really love about these cards is that they have a light attribute and a shadow attribute. So in other words, here's the archetype. Here's how it functions when it's in the light. Here's how it functions when it's in the dark, or in the shadow. And usually the light is leaning more toward divine. The shadow is leaning more toward the darker parts of ourselves, which tend to be shamed, guilt-ridden, warped, however you want to see it. Anyway, the card that I drew for you was Slave. I'm going to show this to you. See if you can actually read it. And so the light attribute says surrendering your power of choice to the divine with complete trust. And the shadow says giving your willpower to an external authority out of fear of making your own choices. So I want to share what the guidebook says too, because there's a few interesting things. It also in parentheses says puppet. And that I think is an interesting description of a slave. There's a bit of puppetry going on where you feel like you're just connected to, I like to think about like a marionette, like you're just connected to strings and someone's moving your hands and arms. And I think sometimes we do give our power away because that feels more comfortable. And this says the light surrenders to the divine, a higher power, or a trusted spiritual master to become truly free. Shadow slave lacks the power of choice and self-authority and follows orders that violate one's integrity. And I think that's the most important piece, is that it violates your integrity. A couple questions to ask with this card. Do you have a history of becoming a slave to the system, or is slavery part of your genetic history, or both? So I'm not going to dive too deep into that, because that was just kind of like a little bit of a thinker card for you to consider. And it may or may not have a bearing on today's reading. I really don't know. We'll just have to see. All right. So I've got my incense going in the background here. It's a root chakra incense. So focusing on the root chakra, which has to do a lot with groundedness, connection to our tribe, family, however that looks, whether it's biological or friend family, it's up to you, spiritual family. And yeah, there's just deep rootedness in like your tribe is what the root chakra has to do with. So when the root chakra has been violated, and location wise, it is it's right in the center of the genitals. So right in between like anus and front genitals, that space there is where the root chakra lies. It is red. And any violation to the root chakra, whether emotional or physical, tends to affect the other. So if it was emotional, it affects the physical, and if it's physical, it affects the emotional. And so that might be something that you do a little bit more research on if you're curious, if that's something that resonates with you or hits home. I would recommend looking up some root chakra meditations if you're looking to do some healing work there. And if that does resonate with you, please feel free to reach out. I have a lot of resources when it comes to the chakra system. If you're not interested, though, I don't want to spend any more time of your reading sharing those things. So I'll leave that up to you to let me know what you think. All right, let's get to it. Okay. Well. So you had asked me about your dreams and what to do with your dreams. And I'll be honest, I didn't quite understand what answer you were looking for, but I also sensed that that didn't really matter, that the right message was going to come out for you. So I just want to give a disclaimer that this may or may not touch on your just specific question that you're asking. But I have a feeling there's some really good stuff here for you. So hopefully it weaves in and that you can get some clarity on what you're looking for. I also do, I don't offer this very often, but I also do dream interpretation. If that is an area of something that you're struggling with, I'd be happy to work with you, and we can talk about what that looks like in the future. So let's dive right in. I'm doing a Celtic cross spread. If you're not familiar with tarot, that's a pretty general spread. It gives me a lot of information, and it usually follows a winding path. So it kind of gives you a snapshot of where you are, what your hopes and fears are, and then it leads down a path of like, here are some resources, here's some things to pay attention to, here's a resolution in the event that there's like a problem or question you're trying to answer. So let me show you what we're working with here. This is what a Celtic cross spread looks like. And again, that's something that you can do a little bit of research on if you're curious to learn more. What I'm seeing here is so in the position of you in your current state, we have number 9, the hooded man. And in the traditional tarot, this corresponds with the hermit. So in tarot, there are two. There's the major arcana and the minor arcana. The major arcana in this deck and most decks are symbolized with a number, with just a plain number, and that's usually Roman numerals. In this deck, they use numbers, just no real difference. But major arcana cards, minor arcana cards are like this, where there's like a suit and like playing cards. Actually, tarot derived from playing cards. And then in this deck, it'll correspond with an animal or something like that. So minor arcana cards, they tend to be a little bit less potent, a little bit more transient, more fleeting, still powerful messages, but the major arcana cards are very powerful. They carry with them really strong messaging. And what's interesting is you have several major arcana cards in here, which is like, and I can feel it, honestly, I can feel the vibration of it. Like you've got some strong messages coming through here. So again, I want to encourage you to hit pause if you need, write down lots of notes, and we're just going to dive in. The current position, this hooded man, so where you are currently, with this, there's a couple things that stand out. One is the hooded figure, and that usually is symbolic of some kind of retreat or meditation. The other thing that's standing out here is a lot of it would be Christmas time in the Christian tradition, symbolism. So there is a wreath over the door. The hooded figure even is covered in like holly berries and leaves. And so there's some tie in there to like the Christmas season, but there's also this like interesting feeling to me of like spring right around the corner behind this tree. So, and then the light that's like really shining the way. So where you are right now is complicated. And maybe you feel that too, where you're like, duh, thanks for telling me something I don't already know. But it's because there's great transition happening right now where you almost feel like you're in hiding, but yet it's like the winter of your existence where you're just like really reclusive and in hiding. But I'm getting the sense that there's also, and there's this like little bird that's chirping. I'm getting the sense that there is this great shift happening, and actually we're going to talk about that. But that's where you are right now, where you may feel very conflicted and confused and wanting that shift to happen sooner, but not, and sensing that it is happening, but yet still kind of like hold up in your winter snow-filled landscape, your internal landscape, right? And what's maybe adding to the confusion of that is that in your recent past, we've got the Ace of Bows, which spark of new life is what that says. You had sense that like there was this new fire burning within you, and so to be in the present moment and have everything kind of doused with snow feels almost like a betrayal. Like, wait, I was promised something. I felt something growing anew in me, and now I'm like cold and hidden away and in the shadows. What's going on? And I think just to give you a little bit of hope, your recent or your near future is the 9 of Vessels, which is generosity. And what I love is like how transcendental this guy looks. Like he has transcended like his current setting. Everything around him is like fire and warmth, and he's surrounded by all these vessels, which And this tarot, that it corresponds to cups in the traditional tarot, which corresponds to emotions. And so there's this sense of like all the questions that you have right now are going to be answered, and also you're going to be content with them, with some of them not being answered, because you will feel such emotional generosity around you that, and you'll be tuning into that too. Like he has a bowl in his lap, and it's almost like steaming, where he's like kind of basking in this emotional generosity, really. The card overlaying these is the Queen of Arrows, which is our swan lady here. And overlaying those means that it's either a bridge from the recent past into the near future, or it's a barrier. I'm getting that this is very clearly a bridge, and I want to look up the Queen of Arrows here, see if we can get some insight into what she's representing. And I'm curious if swans have any symbolism for you. If that brings up something like you love swans, or you had an interesting memory with a swan. I just felt like I needed to ask that, because that's usually when I get these really specific animal cards. Like I had a kingfisher bird a card that I drew for someone, and I really felt like it meant something to them, although I was not getting any kind of a reading on it. And they were like, I've always loved this bird. So anyway, thought I'd ask. Queen of Arrows. So it's entering this. It's the position on the wheel is that it's entering the spring equinox, which is, we are right on the doorstep of that. So I always find that interesting when the cards line up with real life. Let's see. Okay, a state of separation may exist, bringing with it sorrow, privation, and misfortune. You may need to break old bonds and find new rivers in which to swim if you are to move beyond this place of darkness and loss. So clearly a bridge. Also maybe even a boat. Like I love that concept of finding a new river to swim in, because it feels like you're just the thing that's going to get you into this place where you're like totally tripping out emotionally and just feeling really connected to spirit and self and all of that, to get you out of this place of confusion and reclusiveness. You have to open your mind to new landscape. It is time to get out of whatever creek you're swimming in and recognize you are bound for big rivers, for lakes, maybe even for oceans. I know swans don't swim in oceans, but the concept is there, right? Like it's time to dream bigger. Whatever you're in currently is keeping you stuck, and it is time to switch it up. And if you don't know what that means, I have a feeling you do. I have a feeling you're like, there's something really like bells and whistles are really going off for you. If you don't know what that means, I really encourage you to ask Spirit, where am I stuck? And where am I stuck? And can you open new doors for me so that I can see where to go? I have found that Spirit is very obliging when we just ask real and honest questions about what we need, instead of holding back in fear and hoping that they can just see what we need. And I just got like that's a message for me too. Sometimes that happens. Let me see if there's anything about Swan here. Yeah, that's all I got. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, in the hopes and fears positions here, your hope is the 6 major arcana card again, 6, which is the Forest Lovers, one of my absolute favorite cards. And this card, let me see if I can find it. It corresponds with the two of, I want to say arrows. And I want to show you that one too. I feel like that visual is going to be really important for you. Aren't these cards beautiful, by the way? Like, I am just constantly in awe of them. Hmm. You know, it's going to be the last card, of course, that I reach. It just came up in a reading recently, and I just was reminded how much I love it. I love it. Because it's like the stag, like the masculine stag and the feminine horse, and their hearts coming together, and they're pouring into because of this connection, they're able to fulfill themselves emotionally. The forest lovers is kind of the grown-up version of that, because we do have they're actually in human form. They have bound themselves together at this point. They're no longer just touching, but they are touching their individual hearts. And so I think there's a lot. This is a strong card about, to me, and okay, so internally, what it's always meant is a coming together of the masculine and feminine energies that we carry. And we all carry masculine and feminine within us. Most of us lean toward one of the other. And then that's usually when we consider, I don't want to confuse it with gender, because gender is very much like a genetic like manifestation, like what your genes have coded you to be, whereas, you know, this is more of like understanding that feminine and masculine energies course through all of us. And I'm not meaning toxic masculinity or toxic femininity even, where the masculine and feminine are used to abuse ourselves and others, but more the divine masculine, the divine feminine. With the divine masculine really coming in the form of the brave warrior, the protector, the one that's willing to like lay down its life for the feminine, for its lover, that is a little bit more cold, a little bit more distant. And whereas the feminine is very warm, is very nurturing, relationship based, always looking for, where the masculine will lay down his life for the feminine will build a bridge to the heart of the masculine. And so in him kind of falling this way and her falling that way, they overlap and they connect with each other. And they're both really healthy interactions. The protection and the relational connection are both very important. And so this is kind of what I sense with the forest lovers is that this healing between the masculine and feminine energies within yourself. And that might be something to journal about, is like, what are my understandings of masculine energy, of feminine energy? Where have these been wounded areas in me before? And how can I face and address those wounds so that I can really bring about true healing and true integration of these two parts of myself? And for a lot of us, those woundings come from parents, unfortunately. I know for me, for a long time, my masculine was actually pretty disempowered. And I had to recognize that a lot of that had to do with my relationship with my father and my grandfather, who were pretty disempowering masculine forces in my life growing up. And so as I've healed those, the wounds that they've caused me, I have felt a resurgence of the masculine within me coming up and saying, okay, I've got this. I can take care of you. I will take care of you. So I think that's like a hope that you have is, and maybe even you've been looking to the external world, that you will have that kind of connection in the external world. And I just want to let you know, like, as you bridge and build that gap within you, you will start to see it manifest externally. That's not only like a teaching that I've heard, but it's also something I've begun to witness in my own life too. So, so it's something I know to be true. In the fear position, we have number 20 of the major arcana, the Great Bear. And what is interesting about this space under here is it seems like a very sacred, it's the entrance to a sacred space. And the reason I'm concluding that is because of the stones that are around it. Like, this has been a prepared sacred space. And I have a feeling the fear here is that that's always going to be unknown to you. Like, that the sacred world that you long to enter is always going to be unknown. And that for some reason it's being guarded by this like scary figure. And I want to look up the Great Bear because the Great Bear is actually a very powerful spiritual figure. 20. And I have a feeling it may be perspective, like that you may think it's fearful, but it's not. Sorry, I'm just getting a feel for this. So, so they mentioned fear of death and damnation, and because this corresponds usually with the Judgment card in the traditional tarot. And so there's kind of this like fear that if you proceed forward into the spiritual path that you feel called to and that you know you're meant to take, that is going to equate to a lot of fear of death and damnation. And that may be some old karma clearing for you, where either in a past life or this life, approaching the spiritual world or approaching any kind of spiritual connection has meant like harsh judgment. And I want to encourage you to spend some time healing those wounds, because I really believe spirit, God, divine, whatever word you want to use, higher self, is calling to a deeper relationship with you and a deeper intimacy with you. But it is your fear of how other people have used that against you that keeps you from connecting. And this can, as honest as you can be in your prayer time, the better this like healing process is going to go for you. And so if it's like, hey, I'm afraid that you hate me, I'm afraid that you are going to pull the rug out from under me, I'm afraid that you're going to show me something, kind of like going back to where you were, in your recent past, where you felt that spark of life, and now you're a recluse and it's winter and your flame has been doused. Like, that kind of plays into the path that you've had with your spiritual practice, which is where like you sense that good things are on the horizon, but then they always just get snuffed out. And so really bringing that to spirit and saying, this is what I've noticed. Can you help me? Can you bring some clarity to that? Can you help me understand? And allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to be healed. The Great Bear is a great spiritual protector. And so it's protecting this passageway to the other world, but it is not blocking it. And honestly, once you've connected to spirit, the Great Bear is on your side. So whatever it is you're afraid of, learn to make friends with it. Learn to make it your friend. So a couple things to be aware of. And I'm getting the sense that these are energies that you direct at yourself. The first is the Nine of Bows, which is respect. This guy's fascinating to me because he's so interesting. And what I get from him is like, he has a deep respect of the natural world, so much so that he starts to blend in with it and like even mutates to look like the natural world. And so turn any ounce of respect that you can muster right now, I want you to turn that inward. And if you need to, imagine it going like down through the crown of your head and filling up your body. Deep respect. And then as you exhale, respect. Inhale, respect. Exhale, respect. 5 to 10 breaths every morning where you're just like, I respect my body. I respect my being. I respect where I am emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. No longer will I violate myself. Because part of this with him being connected, what I'm getting the sense is like he has such a deep respect for nature that he is so he's connected to it. And when you disrespect yourself, whatever that looks like, you start to disconnect because it's painful to be disrespected, right? Like imagine just being disrespected in your daily life and how painful that is and how much you wrestle with it. And so when you do it to yourself, you disconnect from yourself. And right now, with the process that you're going through, it's incredibly important that you be connected to yourself, to your capital S self. So use meditation and breath work to really heap lots of respect on yourself. Also, avoid exploitation. 6 of Stones here. And I find it interesting where we have 2 people, an old man and a young girl, both starving and begging for food with empty bowls. And almost like they even have like all these, oh gosh, all the honey, all the bee things behind them have been ripped open and torn apart. And there's like, yeah, this sense that just like their resources have been taken from them. Don't give yourself up to exploitation, okay? If there is a place in your life where you feel like your resources are being stripped from you, address it. Going back to respect yourself enough to address when things are being taken from you against your consent. And I think I have a feeling both of these tie into your dreams, that these are maybe things your dreams have been trying to tell you. I also have a sense that your dreams are eventually going to be a gift that serves the community, and you're going to have to be aware of exploitation from the outer world then. So it's best to confront that in the inner world now so that you can have healthy boundaries with yourself and with others when the time comes to share some of these spiritual gifts that you have. You have a powerful ally on your side. Number 8, the stag. And this is very much a wildling man. Wildling creature. He has man legs, but he has, of course, the stag head, carries this powerful weapon, and yet beats the drum of the tree of life. And that's what that is on the drum. So incredibly grounded tree that also reaches its branches high to the sky. That's like the tree pose in yoga is something that we do regularly where we really like one leg is lifted off the ground and balanced against the other. And in that position, you're grounding down through the grounded leg, imagining roots growing. And then you eventually release your hands up to the sky. And that opens up your heart to the universe. So you're saying like, I'm open to what you have and I'm embracing reaching higher, grounding down, reaching higher. And so you have that stag energy with you. If you want to really picture this being on your side, that's cool too. But it's also an energy of incredible connectedness to yourself and to your environment. Sorry, I thought I saw something in the background, but that was standing out, but it was just the sky between the trees. I feel like I need to look up the stag, so I'm going to do that real quick. And this is number 8. It is a major arcana card again, so very powerful messaging. And of course, its position on the wheel is the spring equinox. His horns reach into the sky and are mirrored in the branches of the trees, before which he stands as a reminder of our cosmic connection to the universe and its manifestation in all organic life on the planet. The polished axe head is a manifestation of the human will to change the environment, and not always for the better, so a weighing up of action and responsibility is necessary. The shield, which bears the image of the symbolic major oak, reminds us that we must persevere and protect our natural resources. And so what sticks out to me here is the human will to change the environment. And I think that goes back to the swan, that it's time to change your environments and change your landscape. And and there is a bit of a warning here with the stag, and that is that we are responsible for our actions and must be aware of the consequences. So, again, really connecting with yourself and tuning in is going to help with your decision-making process. And the stag is just kind of this like guide and also warning figure that's telling you whatever direction you decide to go, there will be consequences. And those can be fruitful consequences and those can be hard consequences. Really, the choice is up to you. What do you want in your life? The last card, the card of resolution, is the 5 of Vessels, which is ecstasy. And what I love about this card is, first of all, the protection of the pentagram down here. Being in the center of protection, I think, is where you're headed. You're really aiming yourself to be in the center of spiritual protection, but also it's just this feeling of light, airiness, and dancing. That really deep connection with ourselves leads to love and joy within ourselves. So much so that our beings feel light and we can celebrate. And there is a sense of ecstasy and I don't know, just kind of get that like image of being connected with the other world. So there's a lot going on here. I am curious if any of this has struck a chord with your dream question. I'd love to hear feedback on that if it has. And what the image that I'm getting for you is of one who appears to be pushing through the desert. And it's important for you to know that this is a part of your journey. And in fact, that just kind of leads me back to one of my favorite books, which is The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho. I would highly recommend putting this on your reading list. It is a powerful story. It is a mythology, so it's the mythology of the alchemist who is so connected with the spiritual world that he can manifest that into the physical world, where he can turn lead into gold and has the elixir of life, so he never ages. And it's about this young man's journey toward the alchemist and what happens in that transformation. Um, Again, I just highly recommend that. I think it will be really a powerful read for you and very important. We are currently at time. I'm now going to honor my time boundary here and sign off. But if if this sparks more questions, or if in the future you'd like some more clarity, I'd love to continue working with you. So please let me know. I also am currently offering a $5 credit for future readings to anyone who sends a referral my way. So Miss Ivy got a $5 credit for her future reading, for you, for referring you. And the same could be for you if you would like to share. If this was a useful and helpful service to you, I would very much appreciate you sharing that, and would love to take good care of your people. So many blessings to you. Thank you so much for letting me share. Take care.